All right, we're going to start today by talking about Speak AAC. We're going to explore the modules of model and time as it refers to language development. There we go. So this is where they fall in terms of our MasterPal grid. So model is the strategy where we point to symbols on the device as we speak, and we want to do this as much as possible. Life happens, so of course it's really hard to do it all the time, but the idea is that we aren't waiting for students or children or individuals to prove anything. We want to provide them modeling, not just in response to their bids for communication, but just as we interact with them throughout their day. By definition, a model is a system or a thing used as an example to follow. And when we teach language, it's a really dynamic process. So we are not looking for imitation tasks so much as showing kids and showing individuals, this is what it looks like to talk with your device or your tool or your book or your board. This is how you can influence your environment. So we play the role of being a communicator so that they can learn to be a communicator by following our model. Modeling essentially means speak your words and use AAC to do it. When we speak AAC, we teach kids really important pieces about how to interact and engage with others. We teach them how to control and influence their environment. When we control and influence our environment, when we direct the action of others, when we make things happen, when we gain access to things that are important and meaningful to us. We also, by the words that we select, express our individuality. That's really empowering as well. We show kids how to demonstrate what they're learning and what they're understanding by describing what we see and what we understand and how we're processing the world around us. It also allows us to build and sustain relationships in meaningful ways. Now, a lot of this also happens through nonverbal communication, but when we add verbal communication, when we add symbols and extra meaning, extra context, then it allows us to further strengthen and sustain those interactions. In this way, we teach that language is power, and when kids understand that language is power, then they're much more invested in the process of learning. Speaking AAC also teaches more concrete skills. So it teaches how to combine words to create meaning and also how to rearrange those words to change meaning. It teaches how to fix mistakes. When we speak, we often pause and revise what we're saying mid-statement and keep going. And the same thing can happen with AAC. We don't always have to get it right. When we think aloud about how to find words, we teach kids, we teach how to navigate and we teach strategy. And then there's also the use of function tools, clear, back, home buttons, even how to navigate tabs or turn pages in a communication book or move left to right. All of those functions teach, how to interact. But ultimately, it shows that language is messy. And I love this because I think it is so important that we all have grace with ourselves. One of the biggest barriers to modeling AAC can be the fear, the hesitation about getting started because I don't know where things are, I don't understand it, I don't know how to do this. But diving right in and just embracing the mess and the messiness of it can not only be good for us in terms of our own learning, but it can actually be really good for those that we are supporting because they can see that it's messy and we don't have to always get it right. And we're going to learn together. So I love this quote: having a communication device doesn't make you an effective communicator any more than having a piano makes you a musician. It really captures the idea that it requires instruction, it requires practice, it requires persistence, and that you get better over time. It doesn't happen all at once. So language development is important to look at because it really guides our practices as modelers. Language development is a process that occurs over time and this is a hugely important and in response to motivations and interactions that are shaped by the individual's environment and relationships. When we look at language development, we know that it is acquired in a pretty predictable fashion, regardless of whether a child is typically developing in their language or has a communication delay or impairment. But we see gradual increases in communicative intent, and this is the purposes for communicating. So whether we're requesting or commenting or asking questions, sharing information, those are all reasons for communicating. And those expand really, kids acquire those really at a very young age. Includes use of symbolic language. So, symbolic language is the use of concrete symbols to represent specific things, also ideas and concepts. It includes words, either spoken or written, signs, or clearly pictures and symbols. Their vocabulary repertoire expands, and this is both receptively and expressively. And then words are combined, and increasing lengths, the length of utterance increases, and ultimately grammatical forms and grammatical markers are integrated for more sophisticated language. But acquisition of language is a direct reflection of a child's environment. So it's going to reflect their culture, their dialect, and it's going to reflect the natural context in which they interact. So modeling is not learned, it's not a part of the day, it's in every part of the day. The language development that occurs over the first 5 years is amazing. It's absolutely exponential. If you just consider for a moment how language grows between birth and 6 months, and then again between 6 and 18 months, and oh my gosh, between 18 months and 3 years, and then gracious, between 3 years and 5 years, it's incredible the amount of language that a child acquires. But it doesn't happen all at once. And when a child is using AAC, just because they get a device, it's not going to happen all at once either. It will take years of modeling and of opportunities and exploration and natural context in order for that to emerge. It's also important that we remember that language is not an activity. We don't put it on the calendar and call it language practice time. But language is a part of every interaction. It's a part of every activity. So we can integrate it. It doesn't mean that we have to be talking all day using the device, but it could mean that we make sure we have the device available, and we perhaps model a couple of phrases every hour or every activity or every transition. Another key component is that adults are not gatekeepers of words. So we've all had the occasion where a child has said something, perhaps something we didn't want them to say, in the exact tone, intonation, with the right cadence of a familiar adult. And we hear it and we say, oh, wow, I know exactly where he got that. Kids self-select their vocabulary. So when we are looking at supporting a child's language development, we have to give them words. We have to give them lots of words. A communication display that has 2 or 4 or 8 buttons on it is not going to give them a lot of control over their environment. It's not going to give them a lot of leverage to combine symbols to create meaning. It's going to be very limiting, and they're not going to have a lot of autonomy in what they are selecting. So we do need to, access is there's lots of different ways to support access for kids with complex bodies or complex sensory needs, but we really do need to be mindful of the fact that kids need access to words in order for language to develop. So another way that language development is our guide for teaching AAC is that what a child gives us influences what we give back. If a child says go using their tool, or even through gestures and body language and through their nonverbal means, we are going to give language to that, and we're going to say, oh, go, and we'll point to it on their device. We might expand it a little and say go out. And so on their device, we'll point to go out. Those are the bold words, while we articulate verbally the full idea. You want to go outside. Me too. Let's go. If a child indicates or expresses help, we can expand upon that by saying help open on their device and verbalizing, let me help you open it. If a child expresses on, we can expand that by put on, while we verbally share the full idea. I can help you put on your jacket. If a child says or expresses not like, if they're refusing putting their hand up, we can point to you not like or you do not like as we say, I know you do not like that. We're almost done. So in this way, we're not bound to use AAC for every word that we speak, but we're expanding upon what they give us to support their language development. So there are also exploratory language behaviors that we might observe with individuals who are learning to use their AAC. These could include babbling, self-talk, or repetition. And I bring this up because I think it's really important that we recognize the role of these exploratory language behaviors in language development. This can help kids gain ownership of their voice. That exploration can also allow them to navigate with increasing purpose. So that exploration piece could be part of their learning, and it may not seem purposeful, but it may indeed be more purposeful than is really observable. When they are doing this, it can be important for us to respond meaningfully. So even if it seems kind of random, if we can um, give meaning or expand upon or comment on the words that they give us, it helps them to understand that those words have meaning, and it can motivate them to use their AAC with increasing purpose. We also need to recognize that this is not necessarily a stimming behavior, but it is truly part of the language development process. So, just to recap, modeling, it means speak your words, and all language is learned through modeling. Whether it's part of the developmental process, whether you're learning a foreign language or AAC, all language is learned through modeling, and what is learned is a direct reflection of the environment and the natural context in which individuals interact. Typical language development is our guide for teaching AAC, so we always want to be mindful of where kids are and what skills they're gaining, so we can continue to up the ante. And language development is messy, and this is beautiful that it's messy because it gives us the grace to move forward, even if we don't feel completely confident, um, and and to have faith and confidence that kids are learning through that process just as we are.